Dropping your hands after punching. Bringing your hands back after punching is the first thing coaches teach. Even at the highest level, it's one of the hardest habits to maintain under pressure. David Benavidez does it on combinations. He throws in bursts, and the moment his last punch lands, both hands drift down toward his waist. Ronald Gavriel timed that opening and dropped him in round 12 of their first fight. Benavidez's first career knockdown, though he rallied to win a split decision. David Morrell caught the same vulnerability in round 11 of their 2025 bout, flooring him late before Morrell was deducted a point for a late punch and lost by unanimous decision. Benavidez has the volume and pressure to make opponents hesitant, but that window after every combination never fully closes.
Arturo Gatti had the same problem his entire career. He would throw and his guard would fall open, and opponents who were disciplined enough to wait for it made him pay. Ivan Robinson landed hard shots repeatedly in their 1998 first fight by doing exactly that, timing Gotti's open guard after every exchange and working him over from multiple angles across 10 rounds for a split decision win. Ryan Garcia loads his left hook with a wide, low drop of the arm. It's telegraphed, and the loading position leaves him open to counters. Luke Campbell put him on the canvas in round 2 of their January 2021 fight, catching him through that exact window. The habit has followed him through multiple weight classes. Gervonta Davis lets his lead hand hang low between exchanges, leaving a gap on the right side of his face. Against Lamont Roach in 2025, Davis threw a left hook, and his lead hand stayed low on the way back. Roach read the timing and landed a right hand that forced Davis to take a knee in round 9. A moment so controversial, the referee refused to call it a knockdown, preserving Davis's undefeated record in a majority draw. Leaning back instead of moving. Pulling straight back from a punch feels instinctive. The problem is, it keeps a fighter on the same line of attack, gives them nowhere to go, and leaves them flat-footed when the next shot follows. Adrian Broner built his entire style around Mayweather's pullback defense, but Mayweather's version worked because of elite footwork and positioning underneath it. Broner had the lean without the movement. Marcos Maidana exposed it in 2013, walking him down the whole fight and making him pay every time he pulled straight back with no exit angle. Oscar De La Hoya was an exceptional athlete early in his career, but in his later fights he retreated to a pullback defense without the lateral movement to support it. Bernard Hopkins picked it apart in 2004, timing the pullback and landing right hands every time De La Hoya went straight back instead of moving off the line. Jermell Charlo pulls back flat-footed under pressure, and his head stays in the same spot. Against Canelo in 2023, Canelo timed it repeatedly, stepping in and landing right after Charlo's pullback stalled. Charlo had the reflexes to pull back, but not the footwork to make it safe. Canelo Alvarez developed a tendency in his later years to load up on power shots and pull back on a straight line when pressured. Terence Crawford would neutralize it by staying disciplined, timing the pullback and landing clean when Canelo didn't move laterally. Telegraphing punches. A telegraphed punch isn't just slow, it's readable. Opponents see the setup coming, time the arrival, and either slip it or counter before it lands. Joe Frazier's left hook was one of the most destructive punches in heavyweight history, but it came with a visible dip and load-up that opponents could track from across the ring. Muhammad Ali knew exactly when it was coming and spent 3 fights trying to time his exits around it. The punch still landed because Frazier's pressure made it nearly unavoidable, but sharper counterpunchers with more movement gave him problems for that reason. Riddick Bowe had the tools to be an all-time great, but his right hand came with a wide windup that gave opponents a clear read. Evander Holyfield timed it effectively across their trilogy, stepping inside or slipping before it arrived and making Bowe pay, especially in their second fight, which Holyfield won. Errol Spence Jr. loads his left hook in a way that sharp opponents can time. Crawford read it in 2023 and used it to set up his own shots throughout the fight, consistently getting the better of exchanges when Spence committed to it. Lennox Lewis had a well-documented shoulder twitch before throwing the right hand. Hasim Rahman read it in 2001 and landed the right hand that knocked Lewis out cold in round 5. Weak jab. A jab with no threat behind it gives opponents a free pass to walk you down. Fighters who never developed a jab opponents had to respect paid for it eventually. Roy Jones Jr. rarely jabbed at all during his prime. He didn't need to. His hand speed and reflexes let him operate outside conventional technique entirely.
But when his athleticism declined, there was no foundational game to fall back on. The jab he never developed became the gap that exposed him in his later fights, when opponents figured out that if they pressured him and took away his movement, he had no answer. Mike Tyson used the jab, but almost entirely as an entry tool to close distance rather than a scoring punch. His peekaboo style was built around slipping in and landing hooks and uppercuts on the inside. Against disciplined, mobile fighters who could keep him on the outside and force him to commit to the jab as a scoring weapon, he struggled to control range and get his power shots off cleanly. Shakur Stevenson's jab is precise and well-timed, but it rarely does damage. Against opponents who recognize that, they walk through it and pressure him, knowing the jab isn't a genuine threat. Improper breathing. Breathing in boxing isn't just about conditioning. It affects punch output, recovery between exchanges, and how long a fighter can sustain pressure. When it breaks down, opponents don't need to outbox you, they just need to outlast you. Dillian Whyte has the power and work rate to hurt anyone in the heavyweight division, but he fades noticeably in the mid to late rounds, regardless of conditioning. The early version of Whyte is a dangerous, high-output fighter. By round 8, the output drops, the combinations shorten, and he starts trading single shots instead of working. Opponents who survive his early pressure know that window opens up, and they game plan specifically for it. Shannon Briggs was one of the hardest punchers in heavyweight history, but opponents who made it past the 5th round knew exactly where his weakness was. He was asthmatic and open about it. If a fight went past round 5, his gas tank became the opponent's best weapon. Lennox Lewis took him 12 rounds in 1998, and by the back half of the fight, Briggs was visibly struggling to maintain output, while Lewis barely changed pace. Every serious opponent Briggs faced after that knew the blueprint. Get to the middle rounds, let him burn, and wait. Planted feet. A fighter who doesn't move laterally is a stationary target. No angles means opponents can load up without adjusting, and every power shot lands clean. George Foreman walked straight lines his entire career. No angles, no lateral exits, just forward pressure. Against fighters who could tie him up or circle away, he had no answer until he threw something big enough to end it. Ken Norton showed that a straight-charging Foreman was beatable in 1974. Muhammad Ali proved it definitively in Zaire. Even in his second run, he won because opponents stood in front of him, not because he'd fixed the footwork. Andy Ruiz Jr. barely moves laterally at all. His entire game is built on hand speed and inside work, which makes the lack of footwork less obvious against slower opponents. But put him in front of someone with a sharp jab who can reset laterally, and he has no way to cut off the ring or force exchanges on his terms. Joshua showed exactly that in the rematch, circling, resetting, and picking him apart from the outside without ever letting Ruiz settle into his rhythm. Gennady Golovkin walks straight forward with minimal head movement or lateral exit. It works because his pressure is relentless, and his power forces opponents to engage. But against Canelo, a fighter built to punish straight-line aggressors, the lack of angles made him a stationary target for counters. He could absorb punishment and keep coming, but he couldn't make himself harder to hit. At the highest level, that's the difference between winning close rounds and losing them. Overcommitting on power shots. A fighter who loads up too much gives away balance, timing, and defense in the same moment. The punch may look dangerous, but it often leaves everything else exposed. Deontay Wilder is the clearest example. When he throws the right hand, he can be explosive and fight-ending, but he also falls in hard and leaves his body and lead side open if the shot misses or gets blocked. His power made that gamble worth it for years, yet disciplined opponents who stayed composed could make him pay for the reach. Ernie Shavers had incredible power, but he frequently overcommitted and left himself exposed. His commitment to landing one big shot often pulled him out of position and into exchanges he didn't need to take. Against technical fighters, that kind of overcommitment turned his own offense into a weakness, because every missed bomb left him briefly out of balance and vulnerable to counters. The issue isn't power itself. It's the moment a fighter decides that one punch matters more than staying safe for the next 3 seconds. When that happens, the opponent doesn't need to outfight the power. They just need to wait for it to miss. Standing still after combinations. Standing still after combinations creates the same danger as dropping hands. Fighters throw a flurry, then freeze with feet planted.
Opponents time that pause and land clean counters before the next exchange. Teofimo Lopez throws pressure combinations in bursts. After each flurry, both hands drop as he resets range. Sandor Martin timed those openings repeatedly through their 2022 fight. In round 2, Martin landed a flash knockdown with a sharp left hand, while Lopez stood squared up, visibly slowing the aggression that carried him to earlier rounds before Lopez won a controversial split decision. Tyson Fury unloads body-head combinations with bad intentions. The moment his last punch lands, he lingers flat-footed to reload. Francis Ngannou read the pattern in their 2023 exhibition. Round 3 saw Fury pause after a 3-punch combination. Ngannou stepped inside with a left hook that staggered the heavyweight champion and changed the fight's complexion. Fighting in straight lines. Fighters who attack or retreat in straight lines stay hittable. No lateral angles means opponents track movement easily and load up without adjustment. Vladimir Klitschko dominated heavyweights with linear jabs and straight retreats for over a decade. Tyson Fury completely dismantled that approach through their 2015 fight. Fury circled laterally round after round, making Klitschko miss wide right hands repeatedly by refusing to trade on the direct line Klitschko controlled for years against lesser opponents. Sergey Kovalev charged forward in straight paths with devastating power shots loaded throughout his prime knockout streak. Andre Ward slipped inside those predictable advances across both their 2016 and 2017 fights. Ward turned Kovalev's relentless aggression into clean counters by creating angles that Kovalev's forward movement never anticipated or matched through 12-round wars. Ernie Shavers rushed opponents with raw power, but no footwork pivots during his 1970s knockout run. Ron Lyle evaded the straight-line charges completely in 1975. Lyle landed clean left hooks and combinations from the side, while Shavers overcommitted forward without any lateral escape or adjustment, turning Shavers' power into vulnerability.